Hey everyone, my name is Anne and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be crocheting this Batwing sweater. I'll be making a small here, but you can find sizes X small to 3X large also in this video and in the written pattern that I have linked down below. But once that is all done, here are the supplies you'll be needing. So now getting started on this pattern, I have my 6.5mm hook and my category 4 yarn. We're going to begin this pattern working on the front and back panels. So I will first make a slip knot, and you can do that any way you would like. From here, we're going to make a chain of 50. And because this pattern, or because this video contains sizes X small to 3X large, the amount of chains you'll be making for each size is going to be indicated right on the side over here. But since I am making a size small, I'm going to make a chain of 50. And to make a chain, you want to yarn over with your hook and then just pull through. That is our first chain. Doing this again, yarn over and pull through just like this. And so I have made it back here with my chain, and now we're going to be moving on to row 1. And to begin row 1, skip this first chain and inserting your hook into the second chain, we're going to work a single crochet. To work a single crochet, insert your hook. Again, it should be into that second chain. Yarn over, pull up a loop. You should have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through both loops. And that is going to be our single crochet. Now from here, chain 1, skip the next chain and single crochet into the next chain. So again, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2. From here, chain 1, skip the next chain and then single crochet into the next chain. Just like this. And now you want to repeat this pattern, chaining 1, skip a chain, single crochet into each chain all the way across, and I'm going to work that up, and then I will meet you guys back once I have reached the end of my row. So I have just made it back here with my moss stitch. I went into each stitch all the way across, and it should have gone into evenly. So you should have single crocheted into this very last chain. Now from here, chain 1 and turn your work around. And now we're going to be moving on to row 2. So this chain 1 does not count as our first stitch. So into this first stitch, we're going to single crochet. Now into the next chain 1 space, so not into the stitch, but into this chain 1 space, we're going to single crochet, just like this. Now from here, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1, skip the next stitch and then single crochet into the chain 1 space, chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet into the chain 1 space, and now repeat this stitch pattern coming all the way down your row until you have 1 stitch at the end remaining. So I have just finished working all the way down my row until I have one stitch at the end remaining. Into this very last stitch, just work one regular single crochet. After that, chain one and turn your work around. Again, that chain one does not count as our first stitch. So moving on to row 3, we're going to skip this first chain, inserting our hook into this first stitch, work a single crochet, chain one, skip a stitch, then work a single crochet into that chain one space, chain one, skip a stitch, work a single crochet into that chain one space, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into this chain one space, and now keep on working this pattern until you have 2 stitches at the end of your row remaining. So after you have finished working all the way down your row until you have 2 stitches at the end remaining, you simply want to chain one, skip a stitch, and then single crochet into the very last stitch, just like this. As always, chain one and turn your work around. So now to continue this pattern for our front panel or back panel, you want to repeat these last 2 rows, which is row 2 and row 3, until you have a total of 70 rows. But once again, since this video contains sizes X small to 3X large, the amount of rows you'll be making for each size is going to be indicated right on the side here. But since I am making a size small, I'm going to make a total of 70 rows. So yeah, I'm going to work up my 70 rows and then I'm going to meet you guys back for the next steps. So I am now done with my 70 rows for my bodice, and we're not going to cut and fasten off. We're actually going to move directly to working our first shoulder strap from here. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started on our shoulder strap. So now we're going to be moving on to working our first shoulder strap. So I have already chained and turned my work around. So to begin our shoulder strap, we're first going to single crochet into the first stitch, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain one space, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into this chain one space, and now we're going to be working our moss stitch into each stitch. We're going to be working our moss stitch, except we're only going to be going into 15 stitches across our row. So we're not going to be going into each stitch, we're only going to be working into 15 stitches. So I have just finished working into 15 stitches across my row with my moss stitch. Now into the next 2 stitches, we're going to be working a decrease. To work a decrease, insert your hook into that next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert your hook into the chain one space, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over, pull through all 3. Now this completes our first row. From here, chain one and turn your work around. Now moving on to row 2, into this first stitch, we're going to work another decrease. So I'm going to insert my hook into this first stitch, pull up a loop, into the next stitch, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3, just like this, into the next stitch, into the next chain one stitch, work a single crochet, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain one space, chain one, skip a stitch. Now just continue working your regular moss stitch pattern until the end of your row. And then once you reach the end of your row, you should have done a decrease into this first stitch. Go ahead, chain one and turn your work around. Now moving on to row 3, we're going to work our regular moss stitch pattern, beginning with a single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space. We're going to work our moss stitch pattern until we have 2 stitches at the end of our row. Then I'm going to show you how to do that decrease one more time. And then once you have 2 stitches at the end of your row, go ahead, work another single crochet decrease. And then chain 1 and turn your work around. So now to continue the pattern for our shoulder strap, you want to repeat row 2 and row 3, those 2 decrease rows, until you have a total of 8 rows. So basically you should be doing a decrease on this side while this opposite side stays a nice clean straight edge. But I'm going to repeat my 2 decrease rows, row 2 and row 3, and then I will see you guys back to cut and fasten off. So I have made a back here with my 8 rows for my shoulder strap, and now that we have our first shoulder strap complete, I'm just going to cut and fasten off. So I'm going to cut my yarn and then yarn over, pull through, tightening this up to fasten off. And now that we have our first shoulder strap all complete, we're going to move on to working our second shoulder strap, which is very similar to our first shoulder strap. But yeah, let's just move on with those steps. So moving on to working the second shoulder strap, I'm going to first make a slip knot. After this slip knot, we're going to count 15 stitches from the first worked stitch and then insert our hook into the 16th stitch. So basically what that means is that you're going to count 15 stitches from the first worked stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then into the 16th stitch, insert your hook. And we're going to slip stitch to secure. So just yarn over, pull through everything to secure. From this point, chain 1 and turn your work around. Now beginning on row 1, into this very first stitch, we're going to work a decrease. I'm going to insert my hook into this very first stitch that we did the chain in, pull up a loop. Into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3. Now into this next chain 1 space, single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space, and then working our moss stitch until the end of your row. Once you have made it to the end, just chain 1 and turn your work around. Moving on to row 2, into this first stitch, single crochet into the chain 1 space, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the chain 1 space into each stitch across until you have 2 stitches at the end of your row. And once you have these 2 stitches at the end of your row, we're going to work another decrease. I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, into this last stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3. From here, chain 1 and turn your work around. Moving on to row 3, into this first stitch, we'll work a decrease. Just like this, into the next chain 1 space, single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the chain 1 space, Work this regular stitch pattern until the end of your row, chain 1 and turn your work around. So now, very similar to what we did for the first shoulder strap, you want to repeat those last 2 rows, rows 2 and rows 3 with our decrease row, or 2 decrease rows, until you have a total of 8 rows for your shoulder strap. And by the end, you should have a total of 9 stitches, just as we did on the other side. So I'm going to work up my 8 decrease rows, and then I'm going to see you guys back to cut and fasten off once again. Alrighty guys, so I am back here with my 8 rows for my second shoulder strap. Once you have your 8 rows, go ahead, cut and fasten off once again. Just like this. Then yarn over, pull through everything, tighten it up. So now that we have both of our shoulder straps, this now completes our entire front panel. So this is what my work is looking like so far. And once you have one bodice complete, you want to repeat this a second time, which I have already completed over here. So I have both bodices all complete. They're exactly identical. And now you have both bodices. We're going to move directly on to seaming them together. So yeah, that's going to be our next section of this video. Let's get started on that. So now we're going to be moving on to the seaming section to our project. So over here I have my large tapestry needle with some yarn. And what we're going to do is that starting into this very bottom corner, we will seam up this side, which we're going to be using the whip stitch until we have 8 inches across. So I'm going to show you how to do the whip stitch over here. So I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to insert it right into the very bottom corner of both of these panels and just pull through, just like this. Then now I'm going to come back around into the next 2 stitches and then pull straight through again. Just like this. And then you just want to keep on doing this, coming back around, going through both panels into each stitch across until you have 8 inches across your panel, and then just cut and fasten off once you reach the end. So as you can see, I have made it 8 inches across my panel, and now I'm just going to cut and fasten off once I finish that whip stitch. So now once you have one side done, you do want to repeat this process, of course, on the opposite side as well. Just be getting into this bottom corner whip stitch until you have 8 inches across. And then once you have both of your sides, you also want to stitch together your 2 shoulder straps. So it's only going to go across a few inches. And then of course doing this for the second shoulder straps as well, just whip stitching across until you meet the end. So I'm going to quickly seam up my 2 sides and my shoulder straps, and then I'm going to see you guys back for the next steps. So I am back here guys with all of my work seamed up. I whip stitched the shoulder straps together, as you can see over here. And then I also did both of the sides, just like this. And then once you have everything all seamed up, I've already flipped my work inside out so that the seams are nicely hidden in our work. And now that we have our 2 main bodice sections all complete, we're going to move directly to working the sleeves. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So now we're going to be moving on to the sleeves for our project. So I'm going to first make a slip knot. And then we're going to insert our hook right into the seam of our armhole. So I'm just going to insert my hook all the way down here. And then slip stitch to secure. So yarn over, pull through everything, just like this. Now chain one, and we're going to be beginning on the foundation row. So starting into this first row, we're going to single crochet. And then into the next row, single crochet. And now you want to single crochet into each row all the way around until you reach the end. And there's no exact number of stitches for this section. You just want to make sure you have an even number once you reach the end. So I am back here and I have just finished working these single crochets all the way around my armhole. And now to join this row, I'm going to slip stitch into this first stitch, just like this, chain one and turn my work around. Now we're going to begin on row one. So skipping this first chain, inserting my hook into this first stitch, we will single crochet, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet, working our regular moss stitch pattern into each stitch all the way around until you have one stitch at the end remaining. So I am back here and I have just finished coming all the way around my row with that stitch pattern. I have one stitch at the end of my row, so I'm just going to chain one, skip a stitch, and then slip stitch into this first stitch to join as usual. Chain one, turn my work around. And now moving on to row two, into this first stitch we're going to single crochet. Into this chain one space, also single crochet, then chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into the chain one space, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into the chain one space, and then just repeat doing this into each stitch all the way around, slip stitch into that first stitch, chain one, and turn your work. I am once again back here with my work, and I'm just going to show you how to slip stitch into this first stitch to join. Chain one, turn your work around. So moving on to row three, into this first stitch we're going to single crochet. From this, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into the chain one space, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into the chain one space, and now repeat this stitch pattern coming all the way around your work until you have one stitch at the end remaining. And once you have finished working all the way around your armhole, go ahead, chain one, skip the last stitch, slip stitch to secure, chain one, turn your work around. And so now to continue the pattern for our sleeve, you want to repeat row 2 and row 3 until you have a total of 48 rows. But once again, since this pattern includes sizes X small to 3X large, the amount of rows you'll be making for each size is going to be indicated right on the side over here. But since I am making a size small, I'm going to make a total of 48 rows. So I'm going to work up my 48 rows and then I will see you guys back once I'm all done. Alrighty guys, so I am back here with my 48 rows working my moss stitch in rounds, and now that we have our main section, we're going to do a few decrease rows at the edge here to kind of like tighten up and pinch our cuff in. So we're going to get started on our decrease rows over here. So getting started on the decrease rows for our sleeve, I've already chained and turned my work around. Now beginning into this first stitch, I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. Into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Then yarn over, pull through 3, and that's how we're going to do our decreases. So working this again, I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. Into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. Now you want to work decreases into each stitch all the way around your sleeve. And then of course, once you reach the end, slip stitch into that first stitch to join, chain 1, and turn your work around. So I'm going to work all the way around, and then I will meet you guys back once I have reached this point. So I am back here and I have just finished working that round of decreases. And now this is really simple. You just want to repeat this row one more time so that you have 2 decrease rows. And then we're not going to cut and fasten off from there. We're actually going to move directly to working the cuff. But I'm just going to quickly work up one more round, and then I will see you guys back once I am all done. So I have just finished up this second decrease row, and this is what my sleeve is looking like so far. Now from here, as I mentioned before, we will not cut and fasten off. We're going to move directly to working the cuff from this point. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So now moving on to the cuff, I'm going to make a chain of 36 from this point. So after you have your chain of 36, we're going to begin row 1. So into this second chain, we're going to be slip stitching into each chain all the way down. And to work a slip stitch, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, and pull straight through. Again, insert your hook into the chain, yarn over, and pull straight through. And this is how we're going to be working our slip stitches into each of these chains. And so I have just made it to the end of row 1 with these slip stitches. And now to join this row to the side, we're going to slip stitch up 2 stitches. So this is the first stitch. I'm going to slip stitch up 1, and then slip stitch up 2. Then from here, turn your work around, and those 2 slip stitches that we did on the side do not count as our first stitch. So now beginning into the first stitch, we're going to work back bar slip stitches into each stitch across. And to work a back bar slip stitch, instead of going through both of these loops as you normally would, just like this, we have both of our loops. We're going to go through only the back bar or back loop, and then yarn over, pull straight through. Again, looking only into this back bar, insert your hook, yarn over, pull straight through, and now just continue working this all the way down your row. And once you have made it with these back bar slip stitches, go ahead, chain 1 and turn your work around. Moving on to row 3, we're going to skip this first chain, and inserting our hook into this first stitch, we're going to back bar slip stitch into each stitch all the way down our row, just like this. And so as you can see, I have made it all the way back down my row. And just as we did last time, you want to slip stitch up 2 on the side to connect the row. So that's 1. And that's my second slip stitch to connect it. Then just turn your work around. So now to continue this pattern, you want to repeat row 2 and row 3 with those back bar slip stitches into each stitch all the way around your sleeve. So I'm going to work up these back bar slip stitch rows, and then I'm going to see you guys back to come and seam it all up. So I am back here with these back bar slip stitches for my cuff. This is what it is looking like so far, and it's gonna look a little bit weird from like just looking at it, but these back bar slip stitches do stretch out just like this, so it's going to like fit nicely around your arm. But once I finished the cuff and I went into every single stitch, all I did was just whip stitch down my cuff to seam it all up. And that is pretty much going to complete our entire sleeve. I just cut and fastened off. So now you want to repeat this sleeve, of course, on the opposite side as well, which I have already done. I made the second sleeve just as we did before. So I have this sleeve and then our second sleeve. Now we're going to move on to working the collar over here. So that's going to be the last step to our project. So let's just go ahead and get started on that. So now we're going to be moving on to the collar. So I'm going to first make a slip knot. From here, make a chain of 5. Once you have your chain of 5, moving on to row 1, we're going to skip this first chain, and inserting our hook into the second chain, we're going to double crochet. To work a double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook into that second chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through another 2 loops, and that's how we're going to be working our double crochets. So now you want to do double crochets into all of the chains. So I'm going to show you how to do this again. You want to yarn over, insert your hook into the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, just like this. Then I have 2 more left. Now once you make it to the end of your chain, go ahead, chain 1 and turn your work around. Moving on to row 2, skip this first chain, and inserting our hook into this first stitch, we're going to work back bar double crochets. So to work a back bar double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook only into this back bar, as you can see, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, then yarn over, pull through 2. Again, you want to do this, work these back bar double crochets into each stitch. So I have 3 more left. Just inserting my hook into that back bar, pull through 2, into this back bar, pull through 2, and then 2. And once you make it to the end, chain 1 and turn your work around. And now to continue the collar, it is super simple. You just want to repeat row 2 with these back bar double crochets until you have a total of 36 rows. But I'm going to work up these 36 rows with our back bar double crochets, and then I'm going to meet you guys back once I am all done. So as you can see, I have made a back here with my collar. I have 36 rows in total, and this is what our collar looks like once we work those back bar double crochets. And I did cut and fasten off, making sure to leave a long tail because we're going to use this long tail for seaming. So I'm going to grab my bodice, and now we're going to work on attaching our collar to our bodice, and this is really simple. I'm just going to place our collar evenly around the opening, just as you normally would. And then using this long tail, as I mentioned, we're going to whip stitch all the way around until you have reached where you began. And then I'm just going to quickly work this up. I think it's super simple. This is going to be the last step to our project. And then I'm going to meet you guys back once I am all done with our sweater. So I have just finished up whip stitching my collar all the way around the base, and this is what it looks like. I cut and fastened off as usual, and that is actually the end of our project. The last thing you would need to do is just weave in all of your loose ends, but after that you're all done. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. See you guys next time. Bye! If you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. If you bought this pattern, it would be super helpful if you left a positive review. But that's all. Bye!